Hi, John Alex here with Game 2 of Round 6 in the February Legacy Challenge, playing Canadian Threshold without Devil of Secrets versus Miracles this round. This is my second match against Miracles in the tournament. I lost the first game to a string of, well, suboptimal plays, let's call it that. If you're looking for sideboarding plans, those can be found in the description down below. Or if you're watching from a blog, you probably have seen them already because they're going to be located between the video plays for the first and second round. I'm on a play here, and I like my hand. I have 2 Daces, a Force, and double Stifle. Only 1 land though, that's unfortunate. I'd like to draw another land soon. No cantrips to help out with that, but usually you'll get by with the 1 land in your starting hand. My opponent not playing anything in his Stifle, which is fair. Not drawing a land here or a cantrip. Not great, but Magic is a skill game, so I draw a land on turn 2 when I need it, or turn 3 rather. Playing the Nimble Mongoose here is quite aggressive. I like it because otherwise, if I don't draw a land next turn, I'll have to discard or cast the Nimble Mongoose. And given that my opponent only has 2 lands here, 3 on the next turn, this is the situation where I'm least likely to get punished for it, given that I have Double Daze, Stifle, and Spell Pierce. I wouldn't lose if I cast it next turn and they had counterbalance, but it's definitely worse then, so I'm playing it here. My opponent is going to cast a Brainstorm in the end step. I don't care about that. It's not a relevant card, I don't think. And here's the Terminus, which is great for me because I can stifle the fetch. Unfortunately though, my opponent is going to force the Stifle, which is still fine by me because I'm trading a Stifle for a Force and I think a Brainstorm. Or maybe a Counterbalance, I don't remember, it's not really relevant. My opponent now casting another Counterbalance. I dazed that, they don't have a Force left. And I'm in a great position. I'm ahead on cards because I have less lands than my opponent. I have more pieces of counter magic in hand than my opponent has cards. That's always great. Casting the Nimble Mongoose here again is slightly aggressive, but I'm not going to get punished. In fact, I'm going to get rewarded because my opponent casts a counterspell on it. I really don't care about that. I have 6 more creatures in my deck. The top I also don't care about. It doesn't really do anything. And here I draw the Sudden Demise that I bought it over Surgical. Surgical would be better here, given that there's counterbalance in my opponent's graveyard, and getting rid of all of those is always... well, it feels good to have your opponent not cast counterbalance. They're not usually going to resolve those, so it's not too big of an issue, but not having access to them is also really good. Of course, here I draw a Spell Snare, so the problem is less significant now. End step click, I'm going to Pyroblast. Click is quite annoying, I think, because it always trades for a counterspell. If you let it resolve, they're going to take a counterspell out of your hand, and then you have to spend another card to kill it, or it's going to kill a Nimble Mongoose or something. So it's almost a 2-for-1. I'm fine Pyroblasting here. I'm gonna have to kill it either way. I'm not gonna spend 2 mana on the Sudden Demise to kill it. That would leave me with only Force and Daze back up the turn I do it. So just Pyroblast the click here and move on with my life. My opponent digging for a Force or something. I'm not gonna find it. The Pyroblast is resolving. Main phase Ponder again, something I do not care about. I mean, not that you're gonna force it here, but there are very few situations where I care about Ponder, basically none. My opponent, on the other hand, does care about my Ponder, which is completely fine by me. I'm just gonna get cards out of my hand, that is the plan, and if I get to trade, that's even better for me. You can see how far behind my opponent is here. They have 4 lands and a top. Whereas I have 5 pieces of counter magic in my hand now. Stifle and a Demise. The Demise not really doing anything, but it's a card that I can brainstorm away when I draw one of those. This click, I'm actually gonna have to force. I think I'm pitching the Stifle, which is least likely to be useful. I would prefer to pitch the Sudden Demise, if I'm being honest, but it's not too bad to force the click here. I'm still ahead. Very comfortable position for me to be in. I would like to find a cantrip, then another land and a Winter Orb soon, but this is okay. My opponent is not really doing anything. There's Brainstorm, okay. It's either the third or fourth Brainstorm they have, depending on what they pitch to force. I probably should have checked before recording, but whatever. Here's a Ponder. This Ponder is great. If you missed it, I put a Pyroblast third, and then drawing the land and drawing the Brainstorm next turn. Playing the land this turn because then I get to keep up Spell Snare and Spell Pierce and also Force. Drawing Brainstorm next turn because that gives me the most flexibility. And my plan is to not cast Brainstorm and just draw the Pyroblast hard and keep the Brainstorm for when I actually need it, which at this point I don't. My opponent just has a second top, which is another dead card, especially given that they don't have fetch lands for some reason. There's Counterbalance, which is met with Spell Snare. Good for me. My opponent draws a card for apparently no reason. I draw my Brainstorm. And my opponent just spinning the top. Replaying the second top, which I still don't care about. I draw my Pyroblast, and now my Brainstorm is gonna see 3 fresh cards and shuffle away the Sudden Demise, most likely. Sorry there isn't much to talk about here, but this is really just the typical drawn out game where nothing really happens. I have the Wasteland. I would Wasteland in my opponent's upkeep, but they're activating top here, so I can Wasteland during the end step in case for some reason they want to cast something with 4 mana, which they couldn't do now, but could do if I did upkeep. They have another Tundra, which is fine by me. I draw a land, which is a decent draw. I keep it because of the Sudden Demise, because of the Brainstorm, and then I can put back Volcanic and Sudden Demise. My opponent has Back to Basics, which is met with Spell Pierce. I don't really want that to resolve. No reason to cast the Brainstorm though. Here I play the land because then I get to Brainstorm, Flusterstorm, Pyroblast, and whatever I draw into with the Brainstorm. Usually you will find something to put back. Playing the land here is not necessary by any means. The Pyroblast deals with the Back to Basics, which I just can't let resolve. Well, I could, and then Pyroblast at end step, but that doesn't really change anything. Here I don't get punished for playing the Volcanic because I draw another one. And at this point I'm sitting very comfortably in the game. My opponent isn't casting Mentors for one reason or another. It's good for me. And I still have 4 pieces of counter magic. Well, one of them is a Daze, but who cares? The Snapcaster I let resolve because it doesn't do anything. They get a free Brainstorm, or rather a free 2/1 creature. At some point I'm gonna have a creature, or as you will see, I will draw a Barbarian Ring to deal with the Snapcaster. Which, yes, I trade a card for a Snapcaster, and they get a free Brainstorm, but it doesn't matter too much. The Counterbalance, again, I can't let resolve, obviously, and Pyroblast is the easiest card to deal with that. Playing the Delta here over the Volcanic is not clearly the better play. If I have to hardcast Force of Will here, it's worse. If I don't have to hardcast Force of Will here, it's better because of the Brainstorm. For example, if I Brainstorm into another Brainstorm, I get to shuffle in between. Whereas if I play the Volcanic, I only get to shuffle after the first Brainstorm and not between the second Brainstorm and my draw step. And if I'm remembering correctly, this is actually what's happening here. My opponent, or it's gonna happen a few turns down the road maybe, or in another match. I'm not too sure. I'm drawing Barbarian Ring here, yes. I'm gonna kill the Snapcaster in my opponent's combat. Let's see if I actually play around Ninja of the Deep Hours. No, I don't. So yeah, if my opponent had Ninja of the Deep Hours here, they could have returned the Snapcaster Mage to the hand for free. That would have been really bad, but it's quite unlikely that this is what's happening here. So here we actually have the situation I talked about earlier with the 2 fetch lands and the Brainstorm, because I Brainstorm into 2 more Brainstorms. I'm putting back Volcanic and Sudden Demise because Sudden Demise is just rotting in my hand. Notably, I don't have any more Pyroblast left in my deck because of all the counterbalances and back to basics my opponent played. So I'm gonna fire off another Brainstorm, fetching in between, of course. And this next Brainstorm is gonna be really good. Excuse me, paused too early here. So I'm finding a Winter Orb, a land that I can put away, and a Brainstorm. I'm gonna use the Brainstorm to pitch the Force, putting back Tropical and then Nimble Mongoose, drawing the Nimble Mongoose next turn. So here I'm gonna pitch Brainstorm to my Force. If my opponent has something else, in terms of counter magic, I get Flusterstorm, which is pretty good. So Jace gets forced. Force just resolves, which is great. Excuse me. Here I'm casting Nimble Mongoose before Winter Orb, because if my opponent for some reason has a counterspell here, Force of Will specifically, I'm casting Flusterstorm for 4 rather than for 3. So I don't have to 2-for-1 myself, although it's not clear it's better to not make my opponent tap all their mana. If they have Force, for example, and I play Winter Orb first, then I Flusterstorm for 3, and they pay, and then I Daze the Force, and then they have 7 tap lands with 2 tops on the board, and only 1 card in hand. That would be pretty good for me. But this way, the Winter Orb is just gonna resolve, I think. Yeah, they're activating top to find something, and they don't, and then I'm in a great position. I think they're gonna Miracle Terminus next turn though, which is not too bad for me. I don't really care about that. So the Nimble Mongoose gets sent to the bottom of my library. That's perfectly fine with me. I'm in a great position now. I have Winter Orb and my opponent has tops. I'm just drawing the Tropical because then I get to keep my fetch land for the Brainstorm. Untapping Volcanics because they're better. They cast Pyroblast. Well, actually not anymore. The only color cards left in my deck are Sudden Demise and 3 copies of Nimble Mongoose. Everything else is blue, so it doesn't matter if I untap Volcanics or Tropicals. But obviously my opponent doesn't know that. They just keep activating their tops, which means they're also sacrificing lands, which is great for me. You can see they're now at 6 card in hand, but because they're staring down Winter Orb, they can't do anything. They also likely have some pieces of removal in their hand, which they don't get to use because I don't have Tarmogoyfs or Delvers or Hooting Mandrils in my deck anymore. Still activating tops, not doing anything. And finally I don't draw a land. This Ponder is decent. I'm putting Volcanic third. That doesn't do anything if it's in my hand. Actually, it just means I sacrificed one of my lands and a draw step. Nimble Mongoose is, I think, the card I'm drawing next turn, and Daze is what I'm going to draw this turn. It doesn't really make a difference, to be honest. And here I'm playing the Nimble Mongoose, which actually resolves, but it's gonna be met with Terminus, I think. Yes, I'm also gonna let that resolve. And I now have 2 copies of Nimble Mongoose on the bottom of my library. And also a Volcanic Island on top that I don't want to draw because that would just be a dead card, given that I only have 6 lands in my deck and 4 of them are on the battlefield and the other 2 would be in my hand. So I fetch on my upkeep to not draw the Volcanic. And go to my draw step. Drawing Force of Will, which is decent because it's a counter spell. My opponent, again, going back to activating tops. And they're casting, I think, Council's Judgment here, which prompts my Brainstorm in order to put my Flusterstorm to 3 copies. If my opponent then pays for the Flusterstorm, as earlier with the Winter Orb, I get to daze and they have sacrificed all their lands. Notable about this Brainstorm is it's my last one, so I really need to put back the Tropical. As you can see, I put back one of my fetch lands and the Tropical. The 3 cards I drew were the Wasteland, the Sudden Demise, and the counterspell I now have. I'm going to Flusterstorm the Council's Judgment because I want my opponent to spend their mana, but unfortunately they don't. Keeping the counterspell for a potential Monastery Mentor or Jace. Not that those are ever going to resolve through double days, but fetching on upkeep because, again, I have dead draws on top of my deck. Drawing another Force, which is okay. I play the Wasteland. Again, having the Sudden Demise Rod in my hand is quite annoying. I would rather just extract my opponent's Jaces or something, just to also see their hand. But here we have a Nimble Mongoose that is finally gonna stick. The good old turn 20 Winter Orb, turn 29 Nimble Mongoose for the win. Careful for spoilers, sorry. My opponent is now gonna start digging soon for a Terminus. I just draw more cards I don't really need. The Winter Orb and Nimble Mongoose combination basically has the board on complete lockdown. My opponent casts a Snapcaster Mage into a Brainstorm that I don't really care. Oh, it's a Council's Judgment, which I'm going to counterspell. My opponent is going to Force, and then I'm going to Force back, pitching True Name, I think. At least, oh no, I can hardcast Force, which makes playing the Wasteland so good. I didn't have to activate it because of Orb. My opponent wasn't going to untap that Tundra either way. And here's a counterspell, and now I get to Daze the Council's Judgment. My opponent has spent 7 mana this turn. 2 for the Snapcaster, 2 on counterspell, and 3 on Judgment. Only to lose to a Daze, and now they don't have any more lands, which really shows how good Winter Orb is. Playing another Wasteland. My opponent now trying to dig for a Terminus. I think the Ponder shuffled. And for some reason I don't think I play my Wasteland here, but it does really not matter. I wouldn't hardcast the Force either way. There's a Brainstorm, and my opponent concedes the game because Winter Orb has them locked down and Nimble Mongoose kills them on the Winter Orb and requires very specific answers that they can't just draw but have to position on top of their library at the correct times. And yeah, this is one of the more typical games in the matchup where at some point you just drop a Winter Orb and then your opponent doesn't really do anything, and it really doesn't matter that you only play a creature 9 turns later because it's gonna get unanswered eventually and then you're gonna win. So thank you very much for watching, and see you for game 3 hopefully, and take care.